Okay, hey, thanks for joining Andrew and I. We want to talk a little bit with you about how to minister to your neighbors during COVID. It's been a difficult time for all of us struggling through, and the church, while we are open and having services, people are still, not too excited about going to public places, and it's just been a real difficult time to connect with people, and we feel like even though it's difficult, people still want to feel connected in different ways. And so we want to encourage you with some different ways about how to do that today. And Andrew shared some thoughts with the staff the other day, kind of going back to when we started our church. And so I wanted to have him share some of those thoughts with you now. So, Andrew.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I just have been thinking a lot and praying, like, okay, God, what are you doing in this time? And I don't know all the answers to that. Let me just say that right off the bat. Is what's kind of been taken away, and right, our ability to get together and see each other and hug each other has been taken away. Sometimes our sense of safety and security have been taken away. Health. A normalcy of a schedule, what things will look like for school or church, and all of that has been stripped back. Even our ability to gather as groups and to be at the building is different than what it used to be. And so it kind of just reminded me of, hey, when we were a church plant, when we first started, we didn't have a building. And God was active, powerfully active in the midst of the people of the church at the time. And so a church is not its building. And there's ways that the church carries on its ministries, which don't change in terms of those purposes, whether we have a building or not. How we try to go about doing them will look differently. And so one of the things that just struck me is, instead of a church gathered right now, God has made us, for whatever reasons he has chosen, to be a church scattered. And that reminds me of Acts chapter 8. In the book of Acts, from the beginning of it, the disciples, the few that are there, the 12, and then there's about 120 or so after Jesus' resurrection that are kind of gathered in Jerusalem. And then Pentecost happens, and the Spirit's outpouring comes, and there's thousands of people that are saved, and it's still growing, but it's in Jerusalem. And it's not till they begin to get persecuted, and Stephen is martyred and killed in chapter 7 with a man named Saul, who it becomes St. Paul, standing there giving approval. And then in chapter 8, we read these verses 1 to 4. And Saul approved of their killing him. On that day, a great persecution broke out against the church in Jerusalem, and all except the apostles were scattered throughout Judea and Samaria. Godly men buried Stephen and more. Church. Going from house to house, he dragged off both men and women and put them in prison. Those who had been scattered preached the word wherever they went. And that just strikes me like, whatever God is doing, that's part of it. However we're being scattered and wherever we're going, we are still Christian, and we're still called to live for Christ and to take his word with them. And I think a big part of that then for us, where we all are, means, how do we minister to and love our neighbors well? Because that's where we are. It's where we live. And if we're confined there, if we're walking and seeing people, what a great opportunity that God has put in our laps to minister to our neighbors. So I think that's a great thing for us to think about.
Yeah, awesome. When we think about ideas, so we're trying to think about, okay, how does the rubber meet the road, and what are some very specific things that we can do to make that happen? And I know that when we started the church, you strongly encouraged community groups. We had set up community groups to have different parties, and to invite their neighbors and so forth. And so one of the things that we've discussed recently was just having what we would call pop-up parties. Okay. And those might happen in your front yard. They might happen in your driveway, maybe your backyard if you've got the space for it, or how comfortable people are coming over to your house. So some options with the pop-up parties would be, setting up a fire pit, having some s'mores out, just have people bring their camp chairs and sit around, bring their own beverage and hang out. And so, it could be just that simple, right?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be complicated at all, right? It's just saying, how am I going to be available to interact with my neighbors? Now, Brian and I realize we realize we're in the middle of COVID, and some people will be more willing to interact in closer proximity than others. So we understand that. We're not telling you to ignore all safety and health protocols for physical distancing. That's not what we're saying. We're saying there's ways you can work within those, right? That's like sitting in your driveway spaced out, or your backyard, or wherever that may be. And so it doesn't have to be complex. It can be very simple, because one of the things that is clear is that people right now are longing for human interaction. And human touch, which that we can't do so much, but human interaction they want desperately. I read this article recently about a photographer who, when COVID started, his business just dried up. He's like, nothing left to do. So he went around his neighborhood and got permission from people to take pictures from the street of people in their houses looking out their windows. And he didn't tell them to stage it in any specific way. They said, do you want us to have a certain look? He said, no, I just want you to stand there and look like you feel during this time. And I think he did it for like 60 or 80 some households. And it's a powerful portrait, this montage of pictures of people in their houses looking out, like longing for human interaction. Your neighbors want human interaction. You want human interaction. What we're saying is do that. And take the risk to do it with your neighbors so that you get to know them and love them well in this time. I mean, if Christians are going to be Christians, we have to be Christians and sacrificial in times, even when it's hard. That's what Christ calls us to. He didn't say, take up your creature comforts, make sure you're good inside your house and everything. He said, take up your cross, deny yourself, and follow me. Again, not saying to ignore health standards, but we are called to sacrifice. And it might feel like sacrifice, but my hunch is it's going to feel like joy. We need this. So that's what we want to encourage, and to do that with the love of Christ.
Right. So the pop-up parties are a possibility. And then to be fair, there's some folks that maybe they can't, that's not going to work for them. Maybe that's not their personality to invite their neighbors over. They're a little more introverted or whatnot. What are some ideas that you might think of, Andrew, that people could do?
Right. Everybody's got different things. And you may not want to sit in your cul-de-sac with cooler full of beer or whatever and just talk to people. And you're like, man, that means I got to talk to people a lot, and I don't like doing it. Well, what do you like doing? And I would say, think of that and invite your neighbor to participate. Maybe you like art and you like to paint garden stones. Invite them to do that, and then to go leave those along people's mailboxes or something like that. Or maybe you like crafts a lot, whether that's sewing, or sewing would be indoors. That may be difficult, but maybe a woodworking kind of thing that you could do outside. And maybe you just invite somebody to do that with you. And so it's not a big group of people, it's one or two, but you're just doing something together, sharing a craft that you enjoy and getting to talk about the beauty of that. And man, how good it's just to do something that feels like we're accomplishing something and being productive and seeing beauty in things. So those could be great ways to do it as well.
Yeah. And if you're like our neighborhood, pretty much everybody's doing a house project, or they're redoing their yard or something. And maybe if you have a little extra time, go over and help them, right? I mean, so I took a week off vacation to paint my house, and the Huffs came over and they helped me paint my house. Like they were looking for the human interaction too. They wanted to help out, and it was really great to have them help out. And so,
right. That's one of the things that communities used to do back in the olden days, right? The barn raisings. Hey, the community comes together and helps people build a barn. Like, this is a great time to be able to express that sense of community with your neighbors. I mean,
Yeah.
Brian, you love to fish, right? So if
Right.
somebody wanted to fish, like you can stand 6 to 20
Yeah.
feet apart, whatever, fishing, and still have conversation and do something you enjoy.
Yeah. My boat's actually big enough too. So if anyone wants to come with me, I
There
got
you
it
go.
out the other day. So,
It's like 12
um,
feet long. So you get one
yeah,
on the front, one on the back.
exactly.
There you go.
Uh, Another thing, yeah. So one of the things was like, just what are you passionate about? Bring someone along with you to do that. The other thing is looking out for those who are more isolated. And, there are a lot of folks in your neighborhood, maybe they live next door where maybe they're older or they're a single mom or single dad, and they don't have family around to where they are getting much interaction and they're really feeling isolated. I know that there's a woman here in our church that is kind of in that situation. Single lady, really feeling isolated, worried about going out, and so their next door neighbor, the family, just has been chipping in to help her out, to cut her grass, to pick up groceries. I think she had a maintenance, some sort of maintenance issue with her house, and so the neighbor helped line up getting someone to come look at it and fix it, and kind of oversaw that
Mm-hmm.
project for her, and
Mm-hmm.
it was like super helpful. Like that's awesome. Um, and as I talk to folks, I try to listen between the lines um, of people that maybe in the beginning of this, someone I was talking to recently, an older person, was not really afraid about getting it or whatnot. Like, wasn't really, okay, whatever, we'll be locked down for a little bit. But now we're midsummer, we're into this. Was it March, April, May, June? We're 4 months into this, and there's not a clear end in sight. And we are in phase 3, but that hasn't done a whole lot. People are still getting sick. People are still dying. So there's still a lot of fear and anxiety out there. And so I think the fear, maybe it wasn't there before, is starting to come in. And how long is this going to go on? And so when we do offer this human interaction, it really can be life-giving, life-saving for certain people. And I think one of the points I'm making is you don't know until you ask. Or you don't know until you really try to perceive. Like, so you might ask your neighbor, hey, do you need anything? Oh, no, I'm fine. I'm getting Instacart and everything. Well, maybe they do need some for you to call them. Maybe they do need for you to come over and stand in their yard and talk to them. They probably do need more than what they're saying is part of what I'm saying. So,
Yeah. And that's a great point, Brian, because probably most of your neighbors' physical needs are met. Like they're probably not starving, right? They got
right.
Instacart. That's what they're answering. But
Yeah.
their emotional needs, their need for connection is where it really is. And your need too is really where we feel it. And so I think what Brian's saying, yeah, read between the lines of things. Listen for the undertones. Listen for the level of uncertainty in their voice, the discomfort, just the fidgetiness maybe, and just be thinking, like I would say, be vulnerable, be willing to say, look, my needs are cared for too, but man, it's really hard. I
Mm-hmm.
just sometimes feel in a fog or alone, and then just ask, do you ever feel that way? And that's a doorway into just conversation to see how much they want to talk about it. And if they do, that's great. And if they don't, it's okay. You're loving them anyways. If it does go deeper like that, right, then it's just a great opportunity to listen well to people.
Mm-hmm.
Say, man, I'm really glad we get to be here. Why don't, maybe we should do this pop-up driveway party like every week or something, and just for an hour or whatever. And what a great way to be a good neighbor to people. Yeah, so I'd say listen between those lines. I would say the other thing practically you could do, and this may be a bold step for you, but with your neighbor, maybe at the end of that conversation, if you do something together and you have a conversation, ask them this question: is it okay if I pray for you?
Mm.
I want you to say it that way for a few reasons. I don't want you to say, is it okay if we pray right now? Because that's intimidating. Then they think they got to pray. What do I do? But on my head, do I have to say something? Just say, is it okay if I pray for you? And they'll probably say, sure. And you could go one of two ways with that. You could then say, is there something you'd like me to pray for specifically? And they might share that, or maybe they already have. And you can do that later. But even the next step of boldness would be, is it okay if I pray for you before we go? So before you leave right then, you're going to say a short, quick prayer for them. Don't make it long. It's not a sermon. Don't be Andrew, right? Make it really short and brief, but letting them know you listen and that you care about them. And you've just opened your world to see it. So I'd really encourage you to take that step.
That's great. That's a great way to end it too. All right. So what we want to challenge you guys to do, we'd love to see at least 10 of these things happen before Labor Day. So that's the challenge we're throwing out. 10 maybe pop-up parties or stories, gospel stories that you're going to have for us. And what we'd like you to do is to email either Andrew or myself, and our emails will be up here. And our emails are easy. It's andrew@springrunpc.org or fletch@springrunpc.org. Most of you guys have our email address anyway. So just email us and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, or we've planned to do this particular thing with our neighbors, because we want to pray for you during this time. We want to pray for those parties. We want to pray for your interaction
absolutely.
with your neighbors and everything. So let us know that you're going to do it. And that way we can also kind of see if we've met our challenge by Labor Day of 10 of these. And then after it's over, we really love to know how it went. Like, how did it go? How did it, the Lord use you during that situation, during the pop-up party, or just ministering to someone or serving someone? Let us know. We want to hear those stories. That would be awesome. Anything else, Andrew?
Yeah, I think that's great. We do want to hear them. We're hoping that at least 10 people in our congregation will say, hey, I'm up for this challenge. I would love to be blown away, and there's like 25 or 30 of you that say I'm up for it. Many of you have said, hey, we want to help in some way. How can we do this? And you may be thinking, ooh, this isn't my thing. Do it as it fits you. It doesn't have to be a big thing, right? Remember, just whatever it is that you do. Hey, I like to go on a walk. Invite one of your neighbors to go on a walk 6 feet apart with you and talk with them while you're doing it, however it may be. So we're not trying to say, hey, fit the mold. We're simply saying, be creative. You've got time. Maybe you've been praying for God to teach you about his love or help you to show it to others. He's giving you an opportunity here. Like, what happens if this passes and at the end we go, yeah, I never really got to know my neighbors. Like, the opportunity is here. Yeah, and God's doing something in it. So yeah, let us know. We want to pray for you and be about it. And we want to participate in this too. So Brian and I's don't count to the 10. That's just 12. So there we go. We're already up to that if you guys jump in.
Exactly. Well, good. All right. So that's the challenge. Let us know if you need any help with any of that. We're available to help you with anything.
Absolutely.
So we just want to say thanks for loving people with the gospel. We know that you've been doing that already, and will continue to do that. That's an encouragement to us. We've already heard, like we mentioned before, some of these stories already, and it's motivating to me and Andrew, and we just love hearing how the church can shine. The church, as the body of Christ, can shine during this time, and we just want to continue to encourage that to happen. So
yeah,
let us know. And
it's great. We love you guys and miss you guys. It's tough not seeing you, but we appreciate all the encouragement and feedback that we're getting too. So this is a great way to be the church in action, the church scattered rather than just the church gathered.
Perfect. All right. We'll see you later.
Bye.